Hi everybody and welcome. Thanks so much for coming to the Together Culture Story of a Studio open house on this beautiful sunny day. So thank you for being inside for just a little bit. I'm Heather. I'm one of the founders of Together Culture, together with Ellie Breeze, who is our co-founder. You're all special guests. Thank you so much for joining. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what Together Culture is all about, and I'm going to have a chat with Nik, who is the mayor of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, about creative communities and the power of mistakes, which is something that we're exploring with the Story of Us studio. So Together Culture is setting out to make space to create and to become more creative. So some of that means physical stuff. I think all of us here know Cambridge just woefully does not have enough space for studios and for, not just for artists, but creatives of all kinds. People who are undertaking social enterprise work, as well as people who are doing all sorts of creative making. And we absolutely want to address that and create a wonderful and inspiring creative workspace for artists and for social entrepreneurs. But more than that, what we're really trying to do is to help everybody in the community develop creative skills. So a creative practice isn't just about making a sculpture or painting a picture. A creative practice is about everything that we do in life. And it's about developing skills like listening. It's about developing skills like design thinking. It's about developing skills like collaboration. It's tough. People don't know how to do it. And so a lot of the work that Together Culture has been doing in co-design over the past year, we've engaged 150 people. And one of the things that's emerged are 4 core values. And those values are turning up, collaborating, experimenting, and helping others. And so we've developed something, and they're floating around over here, called the Living Book. Because values on a piece of paper, great. Ta-da! Thanks, Jess. Values on a piece of paper are fantastic. But what are the skills that you need to live those values? What are the behaviors that are required? So all of the programs and the events and the activities that we run are actually designed to help people develop those skills. And it's playful and it's fun, and other times it's a bit more serious and explicit. But that's all baked in. And so the Story of Us studio is our first physical space. And within the Story of Us studio, what we're actually doing is we are exploring how mistakes are a completely universal form of creativity. We all make them. I was on the tennis court this morning. I made plenty of mistakes. We make them every day. And being able to recognize something as a mistake, and then being able to learn from it, we're telling ourselves all kinds of stories and we're making all kinds of decisions. So fundamentally, it's kind of a means by which we design our life. And so with the Story of Us studio, we are inviting 100 people to come in to share their story. So we have trained conversation leaders who talk you through your story of your favorite mistake. And then that story is being captured on a mannequin or a piece of the mannequin by an artist. People who come in get to help make the decisions with the artist as well, as people lean in and make sure that you're really heard. So we've captured 10, we've got 90 stories to go. So this is our little clicker and our countdown. We've only been open for a week, so we're pleased with that. We've got these 10 stories and we've got 10 artworks being formed. What happens to that? Well, it's going to transition into the manifesto for Together Culture and what the community that we're developing is going to be and what to expect, what it feels like, what the culture feels like when you're in a Together Culture space. And so we're writing that manifesto together with ARU. They have some creative writers who we're working with. Then we're transforming that with people at ARU into a film. And people at Fitzwilliam have very generously invited us to install a Wunderkammer. So these 100 works of art are going to be transitioned into a Wunderkammer at the Fitzwilliam this summer, where you can go and then you can also see and hear the film and the Story of Us, which is a Together Culture manifesto that everybody will be creating, premiered. So that's basically what we're doing in this space. And so we are here to answer questions, but I also wanted to ask Nik, since we got you here,
All right.
what does the creative community look and feel like to you?
Oh, $1 million question. I immediately thought about creativity from my own experience. I'd associate it with fun.
Yeah.
I'm not creative. That seems.
Oh,
Which I know is
right.
a classic thing when everybody's creative in their own little way. But I think it's when you maybe move away from societal norms and you kind of find a sense of fun, a sense of expression in the work and your actions.
Yeah.
And how you translate that into a business, how you translate that into the interactions you have with your family, your friends.
Yeah.
That's it's a community that's expressive.
I love that, and it really lines up. Because we've done 10 stories already, we sat down this morning and we started comparing notes to just see what are some of the insights that are starting to pop out from really different stories about really different mistakes. And so what a creative community is that we're hearing is it's a place where I can shed my skin. Meaning a lot of people have been talking about a facade that they have developed in terms of how they present themselves to the outside world. And a creative space is a space where I can be my real self. And maybe even a space where I can recognize, bloody hell, I've put up this facade and that's not who I am. So it's a space where I even learn that. It's a space where permission is granted to actually call myself creative. Because, you started immediately with, I don't think of myself as creative, but inherently you are. And almost every conversation we have with people starts with exactly the same thing. And actually we ask people to plot themselves on a scale of 1 to 10. How creative do you see yourself? How creative do you see yourself on a scale of 1 to 10?
As I say, the creative, when I associate it with expressive arts, I would be below 5.
Yeah.
But I can be creative in the way that I have conversations around the jobs that I do, both as a medic and also as a politician.
Yeah.
And in fact, people would say politicians are very creative.
I would too. Yeah. And I actually hope medics are quite creative too, because the situations that you're presented with.
You have to adapt. So there is creativity in that.
Yeah. Brilliant. And so we start conversations with people rating themselves, and we get one number in the beginning and it's usually relatively low, and then we get another number at the end that's usually much higher because we are all creative. So anyway, so it's a place that a creative community is a place where people have permission to be creative. And a creative community is a place full of advocates, is something else that we have heard. We have heard a lot of people saying that in mistakes that they have made, they've realized that a lot of their mistakes have been because they didn't have boundaries. So a lot of their mistakes have been not seeing my own self-worth, and so I didn't stand up for myself. I didn't say that wasn't okay. And so a lot of what they're talking about in terms of a creative community, it's a community where people are allowed to make mistakes and where people go on this journey of their own worthiness. Because it takes courage to create something new. And so with advocates, it's kind of a reciprocal thing that we're hearing. Where people who've learned that, it's not just about you, it's about helping other people and giving them a hug and lending them a hand when you can see them doing it for themselves, or doing the same thing to themselves. And then the last thing that we keep hearing over and over again is, now that I get that I am creative, I problem solve all the time. And I never knew that because no one ever told me that when I problem solve about even just how to cook dinner and pick up the kids and juggle 16 different things in life, that I'm being really creative. And hey, maybe I could apply that to something else. Nobody told me that was creativity. That's some of what we're hearing. So one of the questions I was going to ask you, Nik, and I'm really happy to share as well. So people have been sharing stories about sometimes really intimate things, not putting you on the spot to do that, about their favorite mistake in life. Meaning something that has helped them to learn these things. And yeah, feel free
No,
to share.
well,
I'm happy to
you
share a story
did
too.
prepare me in terms of sort of thing your favourite. When I read the sort of brief, I thought it was my favourite creative mistake.
Love it. Okay. Yeah.
Wow. And that's what that's why how I interpret it. I mean, obviously I've made many mistakes in my life, But,
Haven't we all?
So I think in terms of a creative mistake, and to a degree being a inverted commas frustrated creative maybe.
Okay.
One of the things I've and a couple of times I've tried to be the singer.
Oh.
So singer. I use my voice.
Love it.
So a couple of attempts, sort of being the front man of a sort of a group of lads when I was at college. It really was just mucking about. But then it was not so long ago, I took upon the opportunity to learn how to sing. But my mistake was I didn't know how to research it. Maybe I didn't have the right space and live in a quite rural area, Cambridgeshire. I did have the opportunity of finding somebody who could sing in my village, who is lovely.
Yeah.
However, the demographic is not similar to my own.
Okay.
In that she was a wee bit older than me, and she's classically trained in opera. So her
classically trained in
So her
okay.
option to me, so if you want to learn to sing, I'll teach you how to sing.
Opera.
So she gave me the strength and belief to kind of learn how to sing, but in an operatic style, which is actually not really what I wanted to do, because I wanted to be a rock star.
Yeah.
So anyway, I have had the benefit of learning how to use my voice and how to sing and breathe properly. But my favourite mistake, arguably, was actually taking that on board and maybe not asking the right sort of singer coach, whatever.
Yeah.
But was when I was given the opportunity. It was at a local pub. It was a big celebration of St David's Day, so it was all things Welsh. And there was and people were encouraged to bring along and perform there. Mm-hmm. So I ended up performing Delilah.
Tom Jones was coming into
Tom
this.
Jones was coming in, and that was the closest to opera that would seem appropriate for that Welsh day. And it wasn't my finest hour. There was an element of, I went out there and I sang, and it was quite, if I'm honest, quite embarrassing, because I wasn't quite the finished article, and also the accompaniment. It was rather unusual. It seemed to go to a jazz arrangement, which I just was way off my key and everything. But the thing was, I tried, and I would say it was a mistake. It was a mistake on that occasion to sing in a pub, Tom Jones. But yeah, that's my creative mistake.
I love that, because that also taps into something that thank you for sharing that. Yeah. That's brilliant. I have all sorts of images in my mind. I grew up I'm half Welsh, and Tom Jones is really, really important in my household. He's sincerely like a patron saint. He's a very important human, and I think it's the same for a lot of Welsh families. But I think one of the things that you really tapped into is courage. Mm. I mean, how much courage did it take to stand up and to sing Delilah on St. David's Day?
I was probably fortified by a few pounds, to be honest. It was a sort of courage. It was a sort of courage. But I had been primed, and I could, I had a coach who was willing to kind of encourage me to express myself.
See, and I think that's just so interesting as well. One of the other things that we did just want to touch on today is, how does a creative community develop? How does it happen? And I think with what you were saying, the idea of the creative community and what's already emerging in the manifesto from this process is the aspect of the community is really important. It's, somebody supporting you, helping you recognize things in yourself, and also teaching you some skills.
Yeah.
It's not just one or the other. And I'll be completely honest, one of the things that often triggers me a little bit when people talk about space and a space to build a community, there's a huge focus on the physical space. And we need more physical spaces. Of course we do. But then people will just say to me, and then the community will just happen organically. And what I have learned to say in response to that is to say, okay, break down the word organic for me. What does that mean? And I think the thing that I read this somewhere, I didn't come up with it myself, but I love it. Organic, O-R-G, is the same STEM is organized. Anything and it doesn't just happen magic like a snap of the fingers. There are, I'm looking at a social scientist in front of me,
gosh.
you know, there's a reason that we have anthropologists and sociologists. There are ways that you design a community. There's a framework that needs to be established when we think about it. We're stood in a church. You know, a church has values. It has certain behaviors that are expected. A church, a religion does. You know, there are certain rituals that are formed so that we can remind ourselves what those values are and how we live them. There are lots of symbols that help to remind us and give us a sense of identity. And together culture, I'm not suggesting is a religion. I'm just trying to use religion as an example that we can all kind of understand that there's this invisible framework and there's this invisible infrastructure that helps a community to be developed as well.
It's often referred to as an anchor institution.
An anchor institution.
So there are, in the same way that you can have a school, a hospital, these are institutions that are rock solid within your community, but then you can build out.
I love that. I absolutely love
sorry,
that.
it's not my idea.
No, that's great.
It's
No, that's
but,
really. And I just wanted, could you grab that Art of Community book for me? Yeah, I just wanted to share quickly. Just obviously well dog-eared, but guess we're in Cambridge. The framework, a lot of the framework that we've been using to build Together Culture and the community around Together Culture. And anybody who's really interested, like I'm a hyper geek and so really happy to sit you down and give you a PowerPoint. But it's called The Art of Community, 7 Principles of Belonging by this man named Charles Vogel, who, it's great. This was absolutely life-changing for me in terms of understanding community development, and that's what we're basing all of our work on. And just for people who are here and considering becoming members, we're developing a book club, and we're going to have an Art of Community reading group. And Charles, Ellie, I didn't tell you this, but his PA got in touch yesterday. He's going to come, or at least digitally. He's based out in San Francisco, but yeah, but that's a bit far to come. But yes. So just so people know, that's some of the stuff that we're exploring. And I guess the last question I had for you, Nick, in terms of communities that are coming together and thriving and really making change within Cambridge, is there anything that's giving you hope? Is there anything out there that you've been seeing? And that's not a leading question about Together Culture. I'm really curious about what's happening in the landscape.
No, again, thank you for sort of preempting and giving me an idea of the sort of questions. I think my being here, I'm going to, I'm turned up, what I would argue is that it is definitely unusual. I was just having a conversation before to have a politically elected mayor and representative. It could be a councillor, town councillor, parish councillor, city, county councillor, wanting to kind of advocate, you mentioned that word strongly, for the arts. Now, I don't come necessarily from an artistic background, but I can see the benefits. Mm-hmm. Now, I do believe that within Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, the area I cover, there is a sort of sense of society wanting to change, and that comes, sometimes in terms of politics, and it may well have been influenced by the country, the county, towns and villages that were influenced by what happened through COVID-19. So as a background, yes, I'm a medic, and I saw what people had to do in dealing with that as an emergency, as a health crisis. But the real crisis was what it did to the community. But at the same time, there was a kind of counter response, which is where we in this country, and to be honest, and around the world, there were similar examples where people started to learn to care. Now, I've always talked about messaging and how that can come out through the work you do as a doctor, but it can come out through the work you do as a cultural organisation, as a school teacher, as a prison officer. If you start with this aspect of actually caring, and that's not just caring for each other and your family and your friends, but caring for the environment, caring for the quality of the air, compassion, this big thing with passion, compassion, then the people who you're trying to kind of change their minds, they start cooperating with you because they can see the benefit. They can see you're passionate about this. You can really, I want to be part of that change. then finally you deliver for the community. And that's why I've always, it may be a regular message that I'm well known for, this old 3 C's. You start with compassion, you work together through cooperation, and then you deliver for the community.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true for the education, it's true for the arts, it's true for the science, it's true for business.
Yep.
Business is changing as well. I had only a meeting this week where I was surprised, genuinely surprised, actually at some of the things saying, but we're trying to help our workers. We're installing food banks. Who's helping us? Well, maybe that's a bigger picture, but there was a real recognition that in a cost of living crisis, that everybody's in it together. That's what happened when we were in COVID. We were in it together. So my hope is that the importance of the stuff that you want to see is going to be given the recognition, because I think it's what people care about. And then hopefully that constant sort of sense of we care. We're going to make the world a better place. We're going to look out for the most vulnerable. We're going to look out for those who just haven't got a penny to rub together.
Yeah.
That makes us a better. And I think it's happening in Cambridgeshire.
Yeah. There's evidence of it happening everywhere, and just to take it back to community design. Again, it's Charles Vogel's definition of what a community is. It's not mine, but what he defines a community as being is a group of people who care about one another's welfare. So anytime you're in a situation like that where people deeply care, that's community, and you feel it. So for everybody that is here, thank you so much for coming. Just to add, with Together Culture, with these big picture plans, our real ambition is to make an impact on the creative economy. And by that we mean how we recreate prosperity to make it more inclusive and ecological. So yes, we're getting started with writing a manifesto and gathering the founding members of our community and helping them develop their creative practice and their connection with one another. But then it's about, what do we do with that? So for us, it's about running a citizen studio every year that's really a democracy project, developing ideas and building up key insights about what matters most to that group of people within that space of time. So we might hear something along the lines of, it's helping to figure out solutions to homelessness, it's helping to find routes into the creative industries for young people who are living in the most socially deprived areas of the county. It could be, how do we change our food system and feed hungry people and develop some new food businesses at the same time? I don't know what it's going to be, but that will emerge. And then it's not just ideas, but then how do we do something about it? So we aim to run an incubator every year, a systems change incubator. And the membership fees that people are paying, £100,000 of those membership fees go into getting the prototypes of those new social enterprises up and off the ground each year. So and it's putting the creative skills that we've been developing into practice. So it's a wealth redistribution model, and that's what we're asking people to participate in. And for every 100 members, 25 people get free membership. That's how everything is built. So I wanted to mention that for people who are here considering membership. I so hope that you will join us. And if you have any questions, we're here right now. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to share or anything they'd like to ask? Or you can do it privately.
I'm happy to share something about creativity, if I may.
Yeah, please.
But I'm just sort of speaking about, because you said about discovering creativity, but of course we're rediscovering creativity because it is inherent in us. And we have it as human beings, we all have creativity. And it is pushed out of us or repressed. And I believe that's part of our of hierarchy, and it's part of making sure that we don't create revolutionary communities. And it's part of undermining democracy, it's part of exclusion, and it's part of being stuck in not being able to imagine a different future or how to change the future. So nurturing our creativity and our imagination is absolutely, like you say, and like Nick says, it's absolutely imperative to progress and how we reshape how we live. And we're in a crisis, and we know that we're in a crisis. We know that we're in a social and an environmental crisis, and we are told this all the time, and we need creativity to be able to emotionally connect to those issues, because we're not acting on them And it's absolutely important. It's absolutely vital that we do that.
I couldn't agree with you more. And so when we have these conversations, and the first thing people say to us, oh, I'm not creative. It's like, yeah, you are. You have to be.
So there's a reason that people have that knocked out of them.
There is. It gets knocked out of us.
Yeah.
And we don't start that way in any way, shape, or form. Nope. Yeah, it's about empowerment, really, at the end of the day, isn't it? To just say, you're a creative being. You always have been. And here's a simple act that happens to all of us each and every day, making a mistake. And one of the things that has been really interesting in terms of conversations with people about mistakes or failure is when you say to people, so who set up the criteria that was a mistake? Who set up the criteria to say, this is a failure? Who did that? Where did that come from? Was that you? Did that come from the outside world? What if there was no such thing as failure? What if there was only transition? What if there was only learning and growing? Maybe that's the truth. And that's been a really powerful conversation, I think, to have. Jazz, would you say?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Jazz has been leading some of the conversations.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There have been so many people that have expressed this kind of feeling of, you know, it's almost like an end. But actually, when they then talked through their story, they then go, actually, hang on a second, no, I have learned something from that. I can grow, and I have grown, and it's that sort of process of like realization that actually it doesn't end there. Nothing has a permanent end in terms of learning. So yeah, it's been really insightful.
So anyway. Thank you, everybody, and I think we'll let you get on to mingle now. But please come, and everybody who's here, please join as members and come and have your portrait taken as well.